Hi, it's Maria from Women into Wellness, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you ways in which you can help to stimulate and regulate the levels of 3 different hormones that are going to greatly affect your ability to burn and lose fat. So stay tuned for that. Welcome to my channel, Women into Wellness. This is where I provide you with tools, tips and strategies pertaining to movement, nutrition and mindfulness and lifestyle to help you maximize your potential for wellness and well-being. Thanks for joining me for today. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, then make sure you go ahead and do that if you enjoy the content today, and share the video so that others can benefit too. So let's get started. Now, the first hormone that I'm going to mention, and it might be one that you don't always necessarily associate with fat loss, is oxytocin. Now, this is known as one of those feel-good hormones, or the love hormone, because it's stimulated by all of those lovely things we do that involve social bonding or pleasurable contact and physical touch. So this can be anything from a hug or a kiss or sexual contact as well. Now, we can also have oxytocin released when we do exercise, so pleasurable movement activities, and this is something that can build up over time with regular exercise as well. Now, the reason why this is so important is not only it makes you feel happy and great, which is a win for everyone, right? But that oxytocin forms a part of something called a hormonal hierarchy. Now, this means that within the body we have loads of hormones which are really powerful chemicals that control nearly everything that happens within the body. They all interplay, they are so inextricably interlinked that it is important that we have balance throughout these hormones, and they are regulated to a level wherein the homeostasis that is required for each of us as individuals and for general biological and physiological function is maintained at a level so that they can interact and have the cause and effect that they are designed for. Now, as I said, it's one of these hormones that is extremely powerful, and it forms the top of a hormonal hierarchy that affects some of the other really powerful hormones that do affect your metabolism, your ability to burn fat, and your propensity to store fat. So when you're thinking about trying to optimize your ability to burn fat, the number one is I'm going to ask you to think about the love hormone, oxytocin. So how can you maximize the levels of this feel-good hormone? And I've mentioned it already, but you really want to engage in those activities that help you feel love. And this can be bonding with members of your family, your social circle, people who bring you pleasure and joy. And it can be engaging in that contact and touch with other human beings, but also with pets and animals. If you're lucky enough to have an animal member of the family, that stroking of the cat, the petting of the dog, these can also boost and release that feel-good hormone oxytocin, which then has that drip down effect because it's going to affect not only the next 2 hormones I'm going to mention, but a lot of other ones as well. But I'm just going to stick to these 2 for today. And it is going to help you, therefore, regulate your ability to control the other hormones that will greatly affect your fat storage and your fat burning ability. So number 2 is cortisol. Now, otherwise known as the stress hormone. Cortisol is released when we are put under either physical or mental duress and stress. Now, what I will add first is that stress can be a positive. We need to have stress in our lives. So for example, when you are doing some exercise and you are increasing the requirements on your body, you are putting it under stress. Now, this is generally good for us to increase our level of fitness, and that provides benefits. The problem occurs when we have too much stress and the levels of cortisol become too high, or we actually have chronic stress. Now, chronic means that it's occurring repeatedly over and over again for a long period of time. Now, in life, we are often all prone to having acute stress happening. So this might be one stressful event. For example, if you have a ding with your car, hopefully no one's harmed, that would be classed as acute stress. Chronic stress is going to be you have something happening day in, day out, or weekly on a regular basis over a period of months, so a longer duration. that is then causing the levels of cortisol in your body to be at a higher level on a continuous basis. Now, reason why this is a problem for you is that cortisol is not only going to make you feel crappy, it's going to make you feel like you are stressed out. You're not going to have that state and sense of well-being in terms of your emotions, your mindset, and the mindfulness that you can engage in. But it's also going to be raising within your body levels of hormone cortisol, which are increasing your likelihood to store fat around the middle of the body. So cortisol, it is the stress hormone. It is also a fat storing hormone. When you have high levels of cortisol, you're much likely to convert a lot of the energy that you're taking into your body into fat stores, and these are most likely going to be stored as adipose, which is like your excess tissue around the midriff. And this is often the place where we find we have excess fat that is problematic, that we want to lose. It's problematic not only because it's not aesthetic for most of us, but also because it increases the likelihood of developing metabolic diseases such as diabetes 2. It also can increase the likelihood of having heart-related or cardiovascular diseases as well. So, what can you do to try and regulate or reduce the amounts of cortisol? What you can be doing is making sure that you reduce the stresses in your life. Now, this means you need to take a bit of time, you need to have some honesty and start thinking about what are the physical stresses or the physiological stresses, whether this is an illness, whether it's that you're living in an environment that has within it molds, fungus, toxic products that are invading your body. It might mean that you have stress due to work, emotional stress because you are a caregiver, for example, of elderly parents and of children. It's for you to work out what the stresses are in your life and try to minimize or reduce those as much as possible. And the way that you do this is either by asking for help, it's by saying no, or it's by putting something off to do another day. And cortisol is often linked as well to this kind of attitude of must do more, must be more, multitasking, rushing around, kind of type A living. So we talk about type A personalities, this type A lifestyle where you need to have your hand in everything, you need to be doing it all at once. Do you? Is the question I'm going to ask you. Can you afford to slow down? Can you afford to drop some things off your schedule? Are there some things that are not a priority that you can push back, delay, or that you can pass on to somebody else to do? So have a think about that. Reduce the stresses. Really important as well is to start to think about how you perceive stresses in the first place. So a lot of it is about mindset. So your perception, your experience of stress is very much a personal thing. So one person and another person can experience the same potential stressor, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, and they will respond in different ways. One person may see this as highly stressful and it will elevate their levels of cortisol. And of course, if that is something that is occurring day in, day out, over weeks and then months, it becomes a chronic stressor and the cortisol levels stay high. The other person may just view this as a challenge or a problem or a growth or learning experience that they can move beyond, or they can work their problem-solving muscle. This other person is less likely to experience the high level, that peaking acute stress in the first instance, and very much less likely to experience it as a chronic stressor because they've put in place the mindset to be able to deal with it, to get over this hurdle, to solve it as a problem. And so it takes away the power of this effect of stresses potentially increasing your cortisol levels. So think about reducing the stresses. Think about how you're perceiving something as to whether it is or isn't a stressor in the first place. Start to slow down and stop multitasking. And really important is to start to gather together and practice and create your own personal toolbox of stress management strategies. Now, these can be preemptive, so that means strategies that you put in place to lower your levels of stress. So, for example, at the beginning of a day, to create calmness, to create this kind of base level of tranquility, peacefulness, where you can deal with situations or stresses as they come in. And then you're also going to want that toolbox or kit that you can use in moments when your stress has gone up, when your cortisol levels have gone up, and you want to then be responsive and reactive and bring them back down. So a good example of this might be, for example, a preemptive one might be that every morning you get yourself in the headspace by doing some gratitude, where you start to be thankful for the day coming ahead, any challenges that come your way, because they're an opportunity for growth, right? You might do a little bit of breathing in the morning to get that morning level of cortisol that naturally happens to wake us up, to lower it down. You might do some exercise, get that excess energy, any pent-up aggression or frustration out the way. And then the other end of it might be that when you are feeling stressed out, you need to bring down those cortisol levels. Breathing exercises, super easy. I talk about these all the time because I use them all the time. Breathing exercises are amazing. You can use them anywhere. They are free, easy to learn, to bring down the levels. Something like a mindful practice such as daily yoga. This can just be 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes, half an hour, longer if you have the time and the inclination. It might be that you are engaging in something like a guided meditation, or you can go out and take a walk. Something that you can use in your toolkit that is going to be preemptive, and something you can use that's going to be reactive and responsive. So important. Manage your levels of stress, bring the cortisol level, reduce your propensity to store fat, and especially that adipose fat around the midriff. Now, the third and final hormone that I'm going to talk about for today is insulin. Now, insulin is that hormone that helps to regulate the blood sugar within the body. So I'm not going to go into all of the physiology of insulin at the moment because that could be a whole video in itself. But what you need to know about insulin is that it basically helps remove glucose from the bloodstream. This is glucose that you would have consumed through your food and your drink. And if it's not being used in terms of being burnt there immediately as an immediate source of energy, insulin then carries it off to be stored in fat cells, and this increases your amount of glycogen that you have stored in tissues within the body. It gets stored within the liver as well, but insulin basically, it transports and carries glucose that's available within the blood, and it stores it as fat. Okay, so insulin levels tend to spike when we eat foods that cause an increase in blood sugar. Now, foods that are generally going to be doing this are sugary foods, especially refined sugary foods. So this is anything with added sugars in it. Fruit, I will add, of course, it does spike your blood sugar, but fruit is a healthy source of sugar. So please don't feel like you want to cancel out fruit in your nutritional plan. Fruit is important and it carries with it fiber, it's water dense, and it's really important for you. But that added refined sugar, so the sugar you add in your coffee, the sugar that you have in a drink, the sugar that you get from having a chocolate bar, some candy sweets, having that cake, even the sugar that's put in things like sauces, because it's added into a lot of different things. A lot of low fat foods have sugars added to them, so they're not actually good for you. So sugar is going to cause an insulin spike. When you've got an insulin spike, you're going to have that sugar carried off, and it's more likely going to be stored as fat within the body, fat that you don't necessarily want to be there. Now, the other thing that can cause this is refined flour. So this is this heavily processed food, especially white flours, things that have had the wheat germ removed from them. They've got the fiber taken away. These things are the products that have been bleached as well. All of these kind of refined foods are going to cause a spike in insulin. Now, starchy foods can also do this, but I will add as well that certain starchy vegetables are actually healthy for you. So there's nothing wrong with eating things like potatoes. However, if you're going to eat potato, you keep the skin on, and it's much healthier for you. So what I will add as well about insulin, so you want to get away from the fats that are unhealthy. Now, these can be a lot of types of vegetable oils. These are going to be your saturated, hydrogenated fats that you get from these kind of processed meats, whether it's things like salamis, luncheon meats, ham or sausages, and then also from your refined processed foods like your pastries. But you want to get away from eating these things regularly because they're going to cause your insulin to spike. Now, removing some of these foods, so I've mentioned your sugars, the added sugars processed, your refined flours and foods, and the bad fats. The third thing that I'm going to say you can do to help lower your insulin levels, and one of the most powerful things, is to start doing intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. Time restricted eating is basically where you're working within a 24-hour period and you are compressing your eating hours into a smaller window in the day so that you have a longer period of overnight, for example, fasting. So if you're a regular person who sleeps at night and wakes during the day, then what you're going to do is you're going to compress that eating window. So it might be, for example, that you have your breakfast slightly later at 10 o'clock and you eat and finish your last meal of the day, your dinner meal, by 6 p.m. And then you go right overnight from 6 p.m. through to 10 a.m. in the morning without eating, so that you have an extended fasting window. Now, if you're looking at doing time restricted eating, you're going to want this to be bare minimum. If you've never done it and you have quite a long eating window at the moment, start with 12 hours and then move up from there in hourly increments. You're looking really to get to the 15 to the 16 at the optimal end if you are new to fasting. That's your length of fasting window. Now, if you're doing intermittent fasting, then it takes the same principle of time restricted eating, but you can then apply that through like a weekly schedule. So for example, you might do a couple of days where you have a time eating window that's 8 hours. You might do a day where it's 10 hours. You might do shorter. There's lots of different fasts that you can do. And if it's something you want to look into, then have a look at different fasting time frames. But if you're new to it, start off with a time restricted eating window, working on a day-to-day basis, and I'm going to suggest that you do that on a 5-2 ratio, so 5 days a week. Try it 2 days a week, take a break and just shift it slightly longer so that you can eat longer period in the day. So add on like a 2 hours to your eating window. But so important, time restricted eating, hugely powerful for managing the levels of insulin in the body. And what could be more simple than just thinking about creating that window as to where you're going to eat within that. You can still eat your 3 regular meals or however many you eat. Just compress it in that time. Give yourself that natural overnight fasting. Now, I hope you found this information about 3 different hormones that really have the power to change your ability to not only burn fat, but your propensity to store it, useful. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. Go ahead and comment below. Let me know if there's any of these that you are already have embedded into your life or that you're looking to embed into your life. If you found value in this video, please go ahead and share it so that other people can benefit. And I thank you for watching today, and until next time, I wish you well.